And welcome back to Livingston Parish News Weekly Show, a podcast brought to you by the Livingston Parish News. My name is MQ David, publisher and editor of the news, and I have fellow podcasters in the room, and they were brought here by Mr. Jim Chapman, who's behind the camera. But I'm going to let these two guys introduce themselves real quick. They have a special show they've come out with. That's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to start on the viewer's right.
Hey, everybody. My name is Chase Catalano. I am one of the co-hosts and co-creators of Hustle Makes It Happen, a podcast about mental mindset and grit, really just trying to make your own roadmaps in life about the mental mindset it takes to become a winner.
Yeah, I'm Justin Bryson, born and raised in Livingston Parish. We, Chase and I decided we were going to start a podcast, I don't know, middle of 2021, I guess. We didn't decide. We started talking about it, kind of tossing around the idea, kind of snowballing some things we wanted to get into. And then we actually came and did Jim's podcast on local leaders, and that's whenever we made the decision that we were definitely going to do it. It was a lot of fun. So
I got you. So first and foremost, pull that a little closer to your mouth. There you go. Or you can pull it. It'll move. I promise. I want to make sure everybody can hear you. So let's dive into a lot of that. First and foremost, how'd y'all meet? Because we've been in here about 5 minutes getting set up, and I can tell y'all have a many year rapport between you.
Yeah, so we both we have in the short time we have a lot going on together and with each other. So we both work at ExxonMobil together downtown. So that's where we met in the workforce. We were on the explosion that happened in 2019. Or was it
2020, February 2020.
We were both called to that event for response, and that's where we had ended up meeting. We've never met before. I've got 15 years with the company. He's got 9-ish.
Yeah, that's right.
So separated at birth, clearly.
Yeah.
And came back together later.
Yeah.
Okay. And so y'all meet each other at a pretty traumatic event, obviously. And y'all get together, y'all become friends. So where did the hustle sort of y'all both just workaholics?
We actually started a business together, not podcasting.
Okay.
We owned a land development company out in Livingston Parish.
Okay.
So we've been running that for 2 years now.
And what do y'all like when you talk about land development, commercial, residential, both? What do y'all do?
So it'd be more residential, buying acreage properties, subdividing it, making it more accessible and more affordable for the everyday home buyer. You know, acre lot, 2 acre lots, things like that. We're trying to preserve some of the land out here in Livingston.
Sure.
So we're trying to buy, larger 16, 20 acre tracts and make them more accessible for the everyday buyer.
Cool. And so y'all have to deal with the parish council. That's fun, I'm sure. So getting into what y'all came to talk about today, which is your podcast. Like, obviously y'all met, y'all started working together. This all is happening really quickly. When y'all were, I guess, introduced to Jim Chapman, I'm guessing y'all came to talk about your development business, correct?
Correct.
That's right.
Okay. So how did that balloon into your own podcast where you're talking about hustle?
Yeah, so like I said, we had kind of, I was deployed we started our business in like August, I don't know, fall time frame in 2020. In January of 2021, I went on a deployment overseas with the National Guard. So I was overseas whenever we started tossing around ideas. Chase was back here running the business, and I was over there just with all the time in the world to sit there and brainstorm and think about crazy ideas. I had some buddies that were real into podcasts. I'm real into podcasts. And Chase and I had started talking about the idea of doing a podcast. And we actually had a pretty solid concept of like, if we were going to do a podcast, what we wanted to talk about. And we never really went any further with it than the conversations that we had with each other. Whenever I came home, a friend of mine was on Jim's podcast, and she had shared the video from Jim's podcast, and I thought that the concept behind his podcast was pretty interesting. We're business owners in Livingston Parish, so it was appealing to us. I actually reached out to Jim through what the contact us form on your website, I think. Just shot him over a little contact note. We got in touch, started talking about the business, and we went and sat as guest on Jim's podcast. Once we finished with Jim's podcast, I think we
were in the parking lot.
Yeah, we were in the parking lot. We were like, bro, that was fun. We got to do that like on our own,
Sure. And as it so happens, and for those of you who don't know, I did a podcast with Mr. Jim Chapman. That was about a month and a half ago.
Yep.
And we talked about his studio, which he leases out or rents out to folks like you. It's called Envision Livingston Podcast Studio. And so y'all came back, right, with this idea.
Yeah, we started talking to Jim about the concept and the idea that we had and kind of the format and what we wanted to go after with the show, like the types of people we wanted to go after, the content we wanted to go after. And he was fully on board, like totally supportive. I think he had a lot of belief in the message, had a lot of belief in us and what we could do. So he was bought in, which made it pretty easy.
So let's talk about those things. I mean, when you're talking about format and you know the kind of, I know y'all just had a guest on not too long ago. So when y'all were discussing these ideas, you know, was there any kind of controversy, or did y'all kind of like it's been, or as it sounds, y'all's story just coalesced?
No, so this grew out of our own wants and needs. As selfish as that may sound, we wanted to start digging into people's mindset, and we actually started to search around through the podcast dark hole that's out there about trying to find people that are hustle minded and dig in between the ears. And we could find some, but it was more the superstardom people that were already very elevated in life. And I don't want to, that's like the 1%ers. I want to talk to the 10%ers that are everywhere, that are doing really well in life. And I want to know how they got there, but we couldn't find that anywhere. We'd find some pieces in other podcasts, but not one that was just fully dedicated to just that.
I got you.
And we found a lot of, like, whenever you search like motivational podcasts or self-improvement podcasts or whatever, you find a lot of people where it's just individual people talking about, you know, 5 things that make you successful, 10 things you can do to hustle. Like, it's a lot of those. I don't want to say cheesy. They're not
No,
cheesy.
they're not.
They're valuable.
Yeah,
but
because I've listened to them and they're great.
we both think that the best way to learn is to talk to people that are doing what you want to do, right? Being
Sure.
successful in whatever it is that they're doing. And that was kind of the premise of the show, is that we don't just go after, you know, highly successful, you know, Fortune 500 CEOs or highly successful entrepreneurs. We talk to aspiring musicians in Nashville. We talk to former football players. We talk to some entrepreneurs and restaurateurs. We talk to a gym owner and CrossFit athlete. Like, we talk to people that are winning at the game that they're playing, right? And that's,
Sure.
I think that's what makes our show a little bit different, is that we're going after all these different types of people and learning what makes them successful in their niche or in their genre. Because if they can be successful at what they're doing, we can probably learn some tips or some techniques or whatever from them that we can apply to our own life.
That's what we're trying to provide to ourselves and our viewers, is our listeners, is there to help build their own roadmap.
Right.
to
Stock the
success.
toolbox.
Yep.
Sure. So, and that makes sense. I mean, like you said, you can find all those podcasts that'll say, here's the tip of the day. Here are the top 10 things.
That's right.
Y'all were looking for more practical advice, right? Because you've listened to all those, so you kind of have your own roadmap. You get to take that and say, for this individual, this worked. For that individual, this worked. But you're trying to pull that out of them.
Yeah, we wanted to go a little deeper, I think, than the, like, 10 tips to be successful. We wanted to go into, like, what do you do when you face adversity? Like, how do you face adversity in your line of work, right? What do you do when you meet an obstacle? What do you do whenever you don't feel like doing anything at all, right?
How you manage burnout?
Yeah, those are the kinds of questions that we get into on our show with our guests.
Sure. So, you know, it's interesting. So all of this, y'all have had this back and forth. We're going to back up just a second. Y'all have had this back and forth. You meet Jim. You do a podcast with Jim about Front Porch Property Group.
That's right.
Okay. So y'all do that podcast. You go out. You're sitting there thinking about it, and then you stop thinking about it and you say, we got to do this. So where does it go from there? Like, your first episode, tell us about the preparation.
So we happened to be on turnaround for 60-something days together, which means we were handcuffed at the hips for 60-something days at ExxonMobil.
Working nights.
So we had long hours, and we had a shared note list that could span about 7 finger swipes up.
Okay.
Between guests that we thought would be great. We started brainstorming. We this guy, we made the intro music, we made the intro, just everything on our time together between work and then home, and brainstorming on the ride to work. We're talking, and then we made just our want, dream list, guest list, and we just started making calls. And then I think we landed on someone that I kind of pushed pretty hard to get our first guest on. He's a fiery guy. You might know him. He's pretty local. He's a local celebrity. Mr. Justin King out of Walker, Louisiana. So
Okay.
good friend of mine. And he's a hustler. He's been a hustler from day one. I've been knowing him for a long time. And we brought him on, and we left out that day and knew we did the right thing.
Sure. When you were talking to him, did it go as y'all expected?
Yeah, I think it went. I think it went better than I expected, to be honest. He was actually the second episode that we recorded. We recorded Brigadier General Cindy Haygood's episode first, which we released second because we wanted Justin King's episode to be the first one that we released. But whenever we were in our brainstorming session, the format that we wanted to follow was to we developed a questionnaire and we send it out to our guests, and they fill the questionnaire out, and it's got all the kind of like talking points that we want to try to hit in the show to get into their mindset. So they fill that out and send it back to us, and then we review it. And for both of those episodes, we actually created like a little show note sheet that we've kind of since abandoned. Yeah. I guess as we're getting better at like digesting the content that they put in their questionnaire, we don't really need the strict outline anymore.
Sure.
But they fill out the questionnaire, send it back to us. We chew on it. We would just like jump on a Zoom call with me and Chase and our other host Garrison, and we talk about the things that stood out in the questionnaire to us. We kind of a little 30-minute brainstorming session, and then we just went into the show. So I think we were super prepared for our first show, which was helpful. And then it went really well, man. So the format that we try to follow is we don't do like I ask you a question, you answer a question. So I don't read off the questionnaire. We try to pull these topics out in natural conversations.
Sure.
And Justin was a great guest, man. All of our guests have been really good so far. They all take the conversation and kind of steer it and run with it. And we just kind of follow them around, and every once in a while we'll ask them kind of some leading questions to get them.
Because one question almost they'll start, and we know the content that they've put on that paper already. We've studied it. So by the time that they're talking about one point, it almost kind of leads into the next thing. And then that's our job, is to just steer it in that direction. And or sometimes it takes a left turn. And to be honest, I like the left turn.
Yeah, we'll just let it go.
Sure. All the ad-libbings when you get a lot of good content.
Yeah, that's right.
And you know, speaking of that and talking about preparation and that kind of thing, you've already touched partially on it. But y'all are still a young show, but it seems like I don't want to say it's changed a lot, but y'all have morphed some things, dropped some things, changed some things. You already talked about you don't really have show notes. You do a study. Anything else that y'all have sort of changed or learned as you've gone along?
I think the formula stayed pretty consistent. Jim has a whole lot more experience with podcasting than we do, so whatever feedback he gives us, we'll
try to implement.
Yeah, we usually take it. Sometimes we're pretty stubborn, but we try to take it.
But yeah, I think the preparation side in anything that you do,
it just gets easier.
Yeah, and I do, like last night, we have two guests coming on that couldn't be totally different: a restaurateur and an author, and they're within an hour or two of each other. So, like last night, I'm looking up things on them that's not in their questionnaire, just to see if there's like some more meat on the bone that I can dig in.
Sure. So, you know, when you're going through this whole process, you've kind of shaped your show the way you wanted it, sort of a reflection of you. What are some of the things so far that you've learned?
Oh man, you go ahead.
I hit you with a left turn.
No, I love it.
That's
I
awesome.
love it.
We're gonna do an episode on this, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. For me, what I've learned the most is a lot of people look at success as an emotion, and that to me has struck a chord, and it's still it's vibrating. That a lot of people are not. It's not an end goal. It's the feeling of success inside, which it just resonates to me because I feel that way. Success is more. It's not an end goal or a monetary value or just something that someone can see. It's more of a feeling inside. So to know that other people share that same sentiment that I feel inside, I don't know. It makes you feel good that you're not. I guess you're not the only one.
Sure. It's validating.
Yeah.
Okay. What about you?
Yeah, so Chase kind of takes this overarching conceptual approach to what he's learned from the show. I look at like each individual episode and try to take a theme away from that. And we try to do that with the way we name our shows. That kind of we kind of try to highlight the main takeaway from the show with the way we name them, with the way we name each episode. But I mean, man, all of our guests have such different stories and they all have such different struggles and avenues to success. It's really inspiring to see. But like Justin King talked about the negative mind loop that you can get into where you're doing things for the wrong reason, right? You're not doing it to make yourself feel better. You're doing it because you're mad at yourself or you're trying to punish yourself. And he talks about his struggle to get out of that. So that to me is a lesson about keeping like a positive outlook. And then General Haygood talked about not having to be the best at everything that she does and picking what she needs to be the best at that day and attacking that full on. And then the last episode we just released, Jamie Glass, the Queen of Sparkle, she talked about, having the courage to take a leap of faith, not only to leave her corporate, very safe corporate job, but then to also leave a pretty rough business partnership. Everybody has these different pieces of advice and little nuggets that they can give that apply to my life for sure, and I'm hoping that it applies to our viewers too.
Sure. And so y'all are doing this, you're learning things, you're trying to guide these folks through their own story. When you're thinking about your story in terms of this podcast, where are you hoping that it goes?
I don't know, man. That's really a tough question. I mean, obviously anybody that's doing a podcast wants to be Joe Rogan, but no, I think like providing value, and for us, at least for me, getting the feedback that we've been getting over the first 5 episodes, five episodes that we've dropped. 6 episodes, dropped the 6th one yesterday. So through the first 6 episodes that we've got, I mean, seeing the feedback from people that I know, my friends calling me or shooting me Instagram messages or whatever.
Or people that we haven't talked to in 10 years.
Yeah, people I haven't talked to in years calling me up, saying, man, I listen to your podcast. It's awesome. I really appreciate the content. And they're giving you specific examples so they're not full of crap, right? They're saying, man, this person said this, and I really appreciate that. That's valuable to me. And I think as long as we can keep that going, maybe expand that audience and start impacting more people. Talking about, Chase talked about that feeling of success. I can feel that whenever we get that positive feedback.
Sure.
Yeah, having our viewership grow as fast as it has in this young time, we do have to pivot and figure things out. And we've just sat down with our producer manager because we're trying to figure out now, like, how do we make this and let it cover itself? Because obviously it costs money to do this. So now we're looking at local businesses in the area that want to help and advertise on our show because our viewership is growing. So that's a whole new like right turn or left turn we're trying to figure out. And that's why we have to sit down with our producer and say, like, all right, so how do we get ad space now? Like, how do we get people that want to put their awesome businesses on our show? Because now we have viewership. We have people that come here every Tuesday and they hit play to listen to us. So that's a new crinkle that we're trying to figure out. And like, I'm not a salesman. Jim Chapman is a salesman, but I am not a salesman. But we're trying to figure that out. Like, how do we start getting ad space out and talking to local businesses? Do we need to go cold call, or do we put it out on the internet? Hey, we're looking to bring on some advertisement, just things like that. So I think it'll be added pressure every right turn or left turn that we're going to make, but we're up for it. We're up for the challenge for sure.
Yeah, basically, I don't think we realized it when we started, but we had our Front Porch Property Group business, and then we started essentially a whole nother business doing podcasts. So now we've got expenses, we've got costs we've got to cover. Chase is talking about we're going to end up having to try to go find advertisers if we want to keep going, because I mean, you get what you pay for, I think, in the podcast world, and Jim's pretty good. He's probably the best.
Yeah,
probably the best around. So I mean, we got to pay for that, and then we're trying to figure out how to start selling merchandise because people want to support. They want to support shows that they enjoy. So now we're trying to pivot and figure that out. Like, how do we start filling orders? How do we start
some shirts coming and things like that, just to put it out in the world? And it has good content. The hustle makes it happen. I would wear that shirt even if I wasn't the co-host.
Sure. So, and let's see, you got outwork your talent. I like that, and then you got a USO shirt.
Yeah.
So, interesting question here, because it sounds like y'all are kind of moving into a world where you've really got three audiences. You're trying to convince advertisers to advertise. You're trying to convince people to come on your show, and you're also trying to convince people to listen. So we just talked about advertising. Obviously, y'all are going to be working with Jim Chapman over there in the corner to sell that. So we're not going to talk about that. But I want to, as we kind of get near the end here, I want to talk about those other two. As your show grows, let's first talk about your potential guests. How has your pitch changed at all, and what is the pitch?
It hadn't really changed because the premise of the show hasn't changed much. Whenever we go to a potential guest, we pretty much straight up tell them, like, look, we admire what you're doing. We recognize that you're putting in work. We know that success isn't an accident, right? We'd like you to come share your story, your mindset, your tricks on how you got to where you are. And people are generally pretty willing to come share their life experiences and lessons with the audience. So getting guests hasn't been too hard. Like, we got big aspirations, so we try to go after like some huge guest really early without a huge viewership. And that kind of is a struggle sometimes, but we're going to get there. We'll just climb the ladder up to them. You know what I mean?
Sure.
We'll just try to get bigger and bigger guests every week, or every season.
And then you bring those guests back when you have a bigger audience,
That's right.
Hey, thanks for supporting us early on. So we'll jump over to you to talk about the audience, like those people out there that you want to listen. There's always going to be early adopters, but when you have somebody that's scrolling through Apple Podcasts and they see it's local, or they see you on Facebook, but they haven't quite clicked, what would you say to them? Why should they listen?
This is for everybody. This is for the mom that found a side hustle that it blew up through the roof, and that she didn't know it was coming, and she worked hard to get there. This is the local musician, the restaurateur. This is everybody. This is the editor, the writer, the author. It's limitless, and you can learn something from every one of these people, because I have. And I'll be honest, I'm not a big reader, but I listened to an author that blew my mind on what they've been through and how they got there. And it's not necessarily their genre of how they're succeeding, it's what they've done to get there. So it's a story, and give it a listen. Click play one time. Give it 20 minutes. It might change your mind.
Sure.
Everybody needs some motivation. My wife, she obviously supports the show, but she gets value out of every single episode. I mean, you don't have to be out trying to start a business. You don't have to be out like trying to go to the CrossFit Games. If you're just trying to be a good person, a good human, a better parent, whatever, these things apply. I mean, that was one of the main takeaways my wife took from General Haygood's episode. I'll go back to that. Is General Haygood says, to be a successful leader, to be have a full-time job, to be a full-time mom, a full-time wife, you can't do everything perfect all the time, right? So you have to pick and choose. And my wife really took a lot out of that episode, where it's okay not to be an A+ mom and A+ house cleaner and an A+ wife. Like, it's okay to kind of let things slip every once in a while, as long as you're able to juggle it all and do pretty good at everything. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So you don't have to be out trying to start, trying to take over the world to get value out of our content. You can just be sitting at home trying to
be a better person.
Trying to be a better human.
Sure.
So it's literally for everybody.
So let me ask you this. The title is Hustle Makes It Happen. What does hustle mean to you?
Grinding every day, waking up with a purpose. That's it. Waking up with a purpose and know what I'm doing.
Yeah, to me, it's just understanding that you don't achieve anything. You don't achieve your goals. You don't achieve success without putting in the work, right? I remember growing up playing baseball. It was about the mindset. Whenever you get on the field, you hustled on, you hustled off. Whether you're winning or losing, you're always moving with a purpose, with a sense of direction. That's what it's about for me.
Okay. Let me ask you this, kind of bring it home. What have you've already kind of mentioned and maybe you have the same experience. You've had, like your wife supports you. You've had friends 10 years. You haven't really talked to them, call you up. What are some of the things you think that the people closest to you or near to you have learned about you since you started doing this?
I think it's an emphasis on why. There's stories that we've been in the middle of, talking about our own struggles too. I opened up recently on an episode, just talking about some toxicity that was in my life prior. Maybe some people don't know that side of you, and I don't mind being vulnerable. I don't really care who listens to it. Learn a little bit about me too, being one of the hosts. I hope they start to see that we genuinely want to, and I know Justin has the same sentiments, but we want to put great content out there for people to absorb, and knowing that it's the feedback. Getting that is, it feels good knowing people are getting that great feedback out of this. That has been the best thing for me so far.
Yeah, I think just kind of knowing what we were looking for in content, not necessarily being able to find it in the format that we wanted it in, and then being able to put all that together and put it out in the world provides a good bit of value.
I think people see that we're genuine, that this isn't
it's not us tooting our horn or being, we're not we own a business that's doing decent, right? We both have
good job,
normal full-time jobs, so it's not about us trying to boast or tooting our own horn. It's genuinely about us wanting to grow and learn as humans.
Sure. And y'all both here in Livingston Parish. Who do y'all have coming up?
So we have Mr. Stephen Hightower, who is the CEO and managing partner of the City Pork Restaurateur Group. And then we have Rachel Davison, who's the author of the book Dangerous. She is a motivational speaker. So couldn't be totally different, but same. Hustle makes it happen.
Sure.
Both doing very well in their own creative spaces that they're in. So we have both of them today. And then yesterday we interviewed Miss Rachel Cannon with Rachel Cannon Limited Interior. So she is an interior designer.
Okay.
Very successful out in the Baton Rouge area. So we had her episode yesterday, which was rock star. She killed it.
Yeah,
sure.
It was awesome.
Well, and three people who could not possibly be at their end job more different.
Yeah.
But I guess you could call it what y'all are trying to do is show that the core value between all of them is the hustle.
That's it.
That's right.
That's it.
Gotcha. So where can people find you? Not physically, obviously, but where can they find the podcast?
Yeah, so we're on pretty much all the major podcast platforms, right? Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, Amazon, Google Podcast,
Apple Play.
Yeah, YouTube.
So y'all have a YouTube channel?
Yeah, we have a YouTube channel.
Facebook?
Yeah, Facebook, Instagram. Okay. We have a Twitter that no one ever does anything with.
We have a TikTok.
Yeah, our website, hustlemakesithappen.com. We got pretty lucky with that domain, I think.
Sure. And that's probably a good hub for people to find you, right?
Yeah.
Good place. So it's a good place to start. Hustlemakesithappen.com.
Yeah, the website will point you everywhere you need to go. We have links to all our episodes there.
Gotcha.
Links to all our social media channels. Our soon-to-be Hustle store, our Hustle merch store is going to be hosted there on hustlemakesithappen.com. So it's a real good central hub.
Gotcha. So if y'all, we are just out of time, came right in at where we needed to be. So why don't y'all take a minute, introduce yourselves, basically reintroduce yourself.
All right, Justin Bryson. I'm the co-host and moderator, whatever, of Hustle Makes It Happen, the podcast.
Chase Catalano, co-host and co-creator of Hustle Makes It Happen. Just looking to get some great content out in the world for you guys.
And my name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you two guys taking the time this morning to stop by and be interviewed, of course, be vulnerable, as you said. And we appreciate all of you out there for listening. Appreciate Jim Chapman over here with the Vision Livingston Podcast Studio for recommending these guys and bringing them by. Want to remind folks that the news is on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. We are once a week in print on Thursdays at $7 a month to get that in your mailbox. And we're also online, www.livingstonparishnews.com. One last time, an appreciative thank you to these two gentlemen and those of you out there listening. We do hope you have a great day, and we will see you next time.